Hey everybody, my name is Eric Schmidt. I'm the regional store manager in Denver with Trouts Fly Fishing. As we start moving in to the time of year where we're getting close to spring, fishing is going to start really picking up again. We wanted to do some videos on fly tying some of our favorite patterns in Colorado. Today we're going to tie the Jigged Frenchie. Great pattern for a lot of rivers in the state. I really love it on the Arkansas. It's a great fly for nymph rigs, triple trebles where you're throwing dry, maybe a couple droppers, a good Euro nymph fly, sinks really fast. It's got a very slim profile. Since it's jigged, it obviously rides hook up, so fewer snags. So today we're going to show you how to tie the Jigged Frenchie. Okay, so first thing we need to know on tying the Jigged Frenchie is I like to use the XT500 BN jig hook from Umpqua. I'm going to do this in a size 16. We're going to use a slotted bead. Because it's a jigged fly, got to use a slotted bead so it fits on there right. You want that bead to sit down on the eye of the hook on the bend. On this particular version, I like to do the skinny body version, which instead of using pheasant tail for the back end of the fly and the body, I use just dark brown thread and wire. Creates a slimmer profile. So obviously a little bit of UTC gold wire. Tail material, I like to use mallard flank. It's just a good barred feather. You can use just a few to give almost an impression of a tail. It doesn't need to be anything really thick or heavy. A little bit of pink eye stub, and then I finish it off with a collar of really bright orange thread for a hot spot. So we'll get started. First step, obviously, always got to get some thread on the hook. So I'm going to dress the hook, get a nice layer front to back, and right about where the bend of the hook starts, that's where I'm going to stop my thread and tie in my tail. So when we use the mallard feather, doesn't need to be very much. It's maybe 4 or 5 individual barbules on the feather and roughly a hook shank length on it. I'll tie that guy in. And then once I get where the base of my tail starts, I'm just going to pin that feather down all the way up behind the bead. Basically, at this point, what I want to do is I want to get some thread and that feather up against the bead to help hold it in place so that it's in the proper place when we finish the fly. And then we want to cover so that our entire hook shank is dark brown, none of that feather showing through. And then take a piece of my small UTC gold wire, and with that slot on the bead, you can take your wire and just slide it into that slot. Makes it a little easier to grab a hold of the wire and pin it. And now I'm just going to go all the way back to the base of my tail and then come back up to the front, making sure I'm covering everything. And then I'm going to wrap my wire up. So we're going to wrap your wire just like you would on any other nymph for a rib. You want some space between it and do your best to get them spaced evenly. Take it all the way up to the bead. I usually like to do about 3 wraps on that, and then if I put my thumb right there where the wire is, you can just bend it back and forth and it'll break off. Nice thing about doing that versus trying to cut it with your scissors, obviously you don't mess up your scissors. The other thing is when you bend it and break it, it breaks flush with the fly, so you don't have anything sticking up that potentially could break your thread. And then now we need to apply just a little thorax of pink dubbing. I like the Ice Dove UV pink. I like a lot of the UV stuff. Tends to light up a a little more when the light hits it. And when I hit this thing with a little UV glue here in a minute, you'll see what happens when UV light hits this stuff. So I'll get a little thorax on there, and then at this point I'm going to whip finish the brown thread off because I'm going to change over to the bright orange thread for that little hot spot. I'm going to put that in right behind the bead, make sure I've got it pinned in place. And then I just want to build a little bit of a thread head or a hot spot there, and then I'll whip finish that off. I'm not too worried about the number of whip finishes because I like to use UV glue to finish this fly, and by doing that you end up getting a nice coat on there and that knot's not going to come undone. So when you hit that with the UV light, you can see that bright fluorescent orange thread really lights up. Put that down solid. And then that's the Jigged Frenchie.